When I switch it? Okay. All right. Thank you. We're good. Yeah, we're ready to start. Could we just get her shirt on? Yeah. Could we just say sorry? Whatever naturally comes up. I don't think there were, because most of them can't wait. People were waiting on the line. Can they see it? Who, the person who was waiting on, can you check it and see if they see it? You want me to just, I can get that. We're about to start. Yeah. Hello, everyone. We are about to start. We have 5 minutes. Our little time. But thank you for your patience. Today we're going to be kind to one another. And just flow of the day. I hope that you guys leave it more than you did. Thank you guys for being here, the professionals who took time off of Saturday to be here. I am going to be, just make sure that your role moving to won't hear much for me. And we're going to have Sylvie come get the stuff started here in about 5. So if you need the restroom, they're out here on the right hand side. If you are hungry, there's fruit, breakfast bar, coffee. Please help yourself. Expecting things to come. Wasn't just started. I don't start it. He starts it. Okay. She said, I can now, but the audio is awful. Awful? Awful. Is you can't see the screen then. So it's a what's the challenge with the lights being on? It's it just looks kind of dark from yeah, when you can't even see you lost on favor. I'm gonna play around. Can you pause the image? I'm gonna play around with. Okay. Testing. How's the sound now? If you guys can hear me good now, put in the comment section. And we thank you guys for your patience on live. We are about to start here in about 3 minutes. We had a few hiccups. We appreciate your patience. You will be on live. You're gonna oh my God. It's so hot to get concerned. Yeah. No worries. No, you can take it off. It's on the phone. You like order something? You know what? They have a show that. Thank you. Oh, so they. Oh, yeah. She was bombing up and down and not saying cool stuff. Some of them are frozen. I mean, I don't know how long it's gonna take to go. Well, I was like, go outside for. Surgeries. Oh. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's a pleasure to see you all. Thank you for coming. Yeah, that's wonderful for told yesterday. Give up for yourselves for attending. And participating as well. My name is Dr. Sylvie, and currently I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a professor and a coach working with people to essentially help elevate their lives and level up their life. Be their best selves in their relationships with one another and within their communities. I am so happy to be here today. I'm so happy to see you all today. Before we get started, I do want to say thank you to all of our sponsors. So we have Mad Book Foundation, Diana Health. They are in the room this morning, and then we have Lifestyle Community. Yes, let's give it up for them. And for our welcome, we're going to invite our host, Danielle Berger. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Before we get started, I think it's very important for me to acknowledge three people because I will forget. But first, I am a child of God, and this symposium would not exist without God. So I have to give all the honor and praise to him. Two other people, Janae, for believing in my vision and for helping me see this vision come to fruition. And my mother, the centerpieces, everything that you see, she helped create that vision for me come to life. And we'll dive in a little bit about the centerpieces in the so I want to begin today not with statistics, not with diagnostic criteria, not with research, but a story of a 13-year-old girl. I was 13 when I got my first period. And from the very beginning, it was not easy. The weight gain felt instantaneous. Navigating that in middle school, I was pulled out of school more times than I can count because of weights, because I didn't feel well, because my body just refused to cooperate. My lips would turn blue. There were and are still plenty of sleepless nights. My cramps, unbearable. The nausea and vomiting were regular. There were days I was crawling on the floor because of severe pain due to vaginal soreness. And yes, that is a real thing, even if we don't talk about it enough. And then there are the mood swings. Oh, the mood swings. There is one particularly embarrassing moment involving me swinging a broom that my cousins will absolutely never let me forget. Maybe one day I'll share that story publicly. However, today is not that day. But just know, hormones and brooms should never mix. But beneath the embarrassment, the discomfort, and the unpredictability, there was curiosity. Why was this happening? Why was it so intense? Why did it feel like every month my body was not my own? And sometimes my mind, because hello, ruminating thoughts anyone? My period didn't just disrupt my life. It pushed me into research mode. And once I start researching something, I don't stop. And I still don't stop. Let's fast forward to 2016. Earlier this year, we got a fun new social media trend called 2026 is the new 2016. Maybe you partake in it. It was everywhere. People were posting old pictures, sharing where they were back then and how far they've come. And as I kept scrolling and seeing posts about the music and the fun fashion, I was intrigued and wanted to take part. So I went scrolling through my own social media accounts and photo albums and quickly realized I didn't really have any pictures from 2016. But as I kept scrolling, I finally found one. This is a photo of me in the bathroom at Seton Hall University after one of my Saturday classes. Shout out to my Pirates! I was tired, focused. I was working full time, attending school full time, and working an 18-hour weekly internship. So I was definitely running on something. Sometimes throwing a little Starbucks if I was feeling bougie. And when I looked at that picture, I realized something. 2016 was the year I wrote my paper on the very topic that brings us here. Unbeknownst to me, that was the year something shifted. I was in my master's program in social work, and we were assigned a paper analyzing the diagnostic criteria for a diagnosis of our choosing in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, DSM-5 for short. I thought my classmates would write about the better known diagnoses, and I figured my professor would want to read something different. So I focused on a less well-known one. I wanted something that made people pause. So I went to the index and started scanning. And then I saw it. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder. PMDD. I remember thinking, what is that? Why have I never heard of this? And is this something that may be affecting me? I dove in with research. The more I read, the more curious I became. The cyclical pattern, the severity, the impairments, the misdiagnosis, the dismissal, the way so many people were told it was just PMS. That paper stopped being just an assignment. It became a call for action. That research didn't stay on paper. It followed me into therapy practices. I began asking different questions. I started tracking cycles with clients. I began noticing patterns, intense depression, rage, hopelessness, anxiety, appearing predictably in the luteal phase and lifting after menstruation, which we will explore more in depth. And I watched light bulbs go off as clients started tracking and saying, I think you were right. I'd recommend they get a second opinion from a female provider since I noticed a pattern of male providers misdiagnosing. They were returning to our sessions feeling seen and validated. I watched my clients sit back and say things such as, it makes sense. Wait, I'm not crazy? I'm not bipolar? It's not just me? Those moments, feeling validated, it's very powerful. It's giving them empowerment. Believe me when I say that PMDD is not bad PMS. It's not a personality flaw. It's not a weakness. And it's not an excuse. It is a severe cyclical hormone-sensitive mood disorder that can significantly impair functioning. It can impact relationships, careers, parenting, self-worth, and safety. Yes, safety. Women and individuals assigned female at birth can experience suicidal ideations, or even worse, die by suicide because of not being accurately diagnosed with PMDD and feeling that something's wrong with them because they are not being treated appropriately. And yet, it remains underdiagnosed. It remains misunderstood. And it remains dismissed. And to be honest, those things really frustrate me. And one day, out of pure frustration, after meeting with the clients, I had professionally posted that frustration on LinkedIn. But hey, it was honest, it was vulnerable, it was fueled by research, but more importantly, it was fueled by my clients. I talked about PMDD. I talked about the gaps. I talked about how many people are suffering due to incorrect diagnosis. I talked about the gender roles at play. The response was immediate. Comments saying, this is an important and necessary conversation. Clinicians saying, thank you for shedding light. Advocates saying, this is a grave systemic issue. And someone said something simple but powerful. This symposium would make an excellent, this subject would make an excellent symposium. And here we are. What started with a 13-year-old girl confused about her body, what deepens with a graduate student flipping through the DSM-5 index in 2016, what expanded through conversations in therapy rooms and on LinkedIn, has led to this room, this space, this gathering. This symposium exists because silence wasn't working, because silence never works, because dismissal wasn't working, because dismissal never works, because too many people feel despair every single month without answers, without validation, without appropriate care. Today, we change this. Today is about empowerment. It's about education and collaboration. It's about bridging lived experience and clinical expertise. It's about asking better questions and tracking patterns. It's about challenging assumptions. It's about showing up for our clients and taking PMDD seriously. Whether you are here as a provider, a researcher, someone who loves someone living with PMDD, or someone personally impacted, you are part of shifting this narrative. When I look at this 2016 photo now, I see someone who had no idea how a task assignment would turn into this. I see someone who was chasing curiosity and looking for understanding, fueled by frustration and motivated by desire to bring change. And I feel grateful. I'm grateful that after today's symposium, we will no longer have conversations about premenstrual dysphoric disorder behind closed doors. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to learn. Thank you for spreading the word. And thank you for being a part of turning something that was once isolating into something community. And seeing all of this come together, it really had me thinking. When I started brainstorming a name for this symposium, I wanted it to be intentional. You know, you want it to connect. And when I think about connection, I think about past and the present. I think about meaning. I think about impact. So you might be wondering, why L.I.M.E? If you look around you and on the screen, you will see the various shades of lime green and teal. Historically, lime green was the color for premenstrual dysphoric disorder awareness. It was chosen to represent the body's cycle and health, as well as recovery, treatment, and support. Lime green was also a symbol of visibility and solidarity because so many women suffered in silence. Teal became the more visible color by April 2021. The color teal comes from combining blue and green. Blue for calmness and green for healing. Together, they capture the contrast between stability and episodes. We can think of it as calm versus turbulence. How to stay calm amid severe symptoms like those mood swings. Now, you'll see the teal being used in more mental health spaces to help people understand the severity of PMDD. Both colors represent what the symposium is reflecting. However, it was important to me to honor the color lime green as a foundation of awareness and advocacy, and to honor the people who paved the way for PMDD awareness. As you can see from this slide, your table centerpieces incorporates at least one of the symbols reflected in this image. Everything you hear and see today is rooted in intentionality and meaning. And in your swag bags, you also will provide a copy of the image as well as the meaning. And now, I am beyond honored to present to you the L.I.M.E Symposium, Living in Mental Empowerment, Understanding and Unmasking Premenstrual Dysphoric Disorder. Thank you. Talk about turning pain into purpose and using your story to educate, to empower, and impact other people. Come on, y'all. Let's give Danielle a round of applause. Amazing. Oh my goodness. So at this moment, we're going to invite Dr. Michelle up to do her presentation on the history of PMDD. And while she's coming up, I invite you all to read about her professional work in the pamphlets. And during our networking hour, our networking lunch, I would just invite you guys to go to her table, get to know her more, and gain some information. And Just a reminder to hold all questions until after each speaker's presentation. Thank you. And now we have Dr. Michelle. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm so thrilled to be here. That was my cousin who just spoke earlier. So, yeah. um, I have the honor of actually providing the historical overview and in a way that only a doula can, right? So what do we do? We take information that is clinical, that is evidence-based, that is science-driven, that sounds really heavy, and we try to give it to you in a way that's so much more powerful, right? Um, it's about level set, making sure everybody in the room knows what we're talking about, okay? And that's what this historical overview will be about. So I'm juggling a whole bunch of things here. Let's see if this works. Right. Oh, yes. So EMDD was described to you by Danielle. And I'm going to talk about the discussion around when it started to be recognized, why it was delayed in this conversation, and the impact it has on not just the people who are experiencing it, but the providers who are trying to diagnose it. Okay? Because EMDD didn't suddenly appear in 2013. We finally now have a clinical name to something people have been living with for decades. That's what this is about. And because adults learn through repetition, we're going to redo this again. We're going to talk about PMDD because I'm the person who does not like acronyms. I like those to be defined to me all the time. So we're going to say premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It is about severe cyclical mood disorders. I'm going to say that again. Cyclical. What does that mean? That means it's repetitive. That means it's not a one-time thing.
That means it's certainly something that's going to continue to happen. It's also triggered by the sensitivity to hormonal changes. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. That is sensitivity. We know what sensitivities are. We know people who are sensitive to almonds. We know people who are sensitive to dairy. We know people who are sensitive to their periods, and that's PMDD. This impacts how we function, how they function, their relationships, their identity. She talked about being labeled possibly bipolar. What does that do to a 13-year-old child? What does that do to a 20-year-old or 50-year-old? When you don't know what the reason is for your drastic mood swings, when it's not defined, and when no one can actually tell you what's happening or believes you. And I know, Lauren, I'm not going to cut your grass. I know you're going to talk about the difference between PMS and PMDD, but we are fully aware of PMS because it started that conversation in the 1950s, like my daughter likes to call it, the mid-1900s. Okay? PMS is mild and moderate, not to be dismissed as a non-issue, but certainly nowhere near in comparison to the severity of PMDD, which is impairing in life. And I think the reason, okay, here we go. We talk about the pattern, we talk about the idea of it being cyclical. Okay? And if you're not looking for the pattern, you miss the diagnosis. So the first thing that we have to talk about is that the symptoms occur in the luteal phase. Now, I know when I was little, and my mother talked to me about the birds and the bees and my menstruation, luteal phase was not part of that conversation. That was not a standard understanding within our vernacular of what menstruation was. We knew about ovulation, we knew about the period, but the time after that was the time we're not menstruating, right? It wasn't an understanding of what luteal meant. We also know in that pattern that it also peaks. The dysphoric disorder peaks a week before menstruation. And then it only starts to subside a few days into menstruation. So sufferers of PMDD are never getting a break. It is a non-ending, everlasting issue. All right, so we've set the tone for kind of what it is. Let's talk about when the world started to recognize. So as I mentioned, right, here's my timeline. I'm a nerd. You read my bio, you know I'm a chemical engineer, so I like charts and graphs all day. So this timeline kind of helps to notice the serious gaps and when we were actually able to have a conversation about this disease. PMS in the 1950s, right? The start of that. I don't know if you can see it very well, but PMS, the start, the 1950s. It was not identified and recognized in the US until 2013. And it was not actually globalized until 2019. 1950s to 2019. Now, I'm not going to talk about my cousin way in the back. We already know, because I'm about to be 60 next week. So we already know that that is a long time to go undiagnosed. A very long time. Now let's get into where and who the people are that are supposed to be doing this diagnostic information for us. And it's the DSM. And that means the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So it is kind of like the reference book, the guide, the Bible of mental disorders. It lets us know if it's in that book, then it's real. If it's not in that book, it's not real. Even though we're experiencing it, even though we're living it, because it's not in that book, nobody knows how to diagnose it. And so it gets missed. Danielle used the words dismissed a lot. It gets misdiagnosed, it gets dismissed. This is published by the American Psychiatric Association, and it defines mental health diagnoses in the US. So very similar to the PDR for physicians, right? The physician desk reference. Lets us know what those ailments and diseases and what to do and what, those are the steps. And that's very similar for mental health disorders. And when that condition is included in the DSM, it becomes formally recognized within the medical system. Now, there's a lot of benefit for medical recognition. We're going to talk about that in a second. So down this timeline, we have the DSM third, number 3, R means revision. 1987 was the first time it showed up. And it was called the late luteal phase dysphoric disorder. Now, like I said before, do we all know what luteal phase was? No. Right? So it's in the book. It's there. Oh, what are we going to do with that? It was also set up as needing further study. So it wasn't officially like labeled a thing. It was like, we'll get back to that. It's basically the way that was managed. 1987. 1994, DSM-4 renamed it to premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Now we get the acronym, the PMDD. What else do we know that's premenstrual? What else are we familiar with? Is premenstrual PMS, right? So, okay, we're maybe now getting to a point where we're making this more palatable for the public, and that's typically what happens. We understand now that premenstrual means before menstruation. I'm feeling these things before I menstruate. So now you can understand why it also makes it easy for there to be a lot of confusion around PMD and PMS. But it remains still in research mode. Okay, still not defined as anything. We got a name, but we have no definition. Years of lived experience without full clinical validation. That's what patients need, is to be validated in their health. Finally, 2013 DSM-5 officially recognizes it as a diagnosis and classifies it under depressive disorders. What's the impact of that? Now we have a diagnosis. Now we have recognition, and when we have recognition, what can we also get? We can get our insurance to pay for treatments, right? And then now that we have recognition, we also now have people going, oh, that might be something that I should study too. So now we have increased research attention. That's positive. But think about all the people before 2013 who had no diagnosis and who were managing this on their own and struggling. So like I said, more research. So the National Institute of Health is a big branch, and the National Institute of Mental Health kind of works underneath them. And so they linked together to reinforce that PMDD is associated with abnormal sensitivity to normal ovarian hormone changes. Why is that important? That's important because so often people were told that it was an imbalance, that there was something wrong with them. It is a sensitivity. Your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, but you're sensitive to those hormonal shifts from estrogen to progesterone. Those shifts are creating the issue. So this was one of the strongest places to show the field that we're moving from skepticism to mechanism. That's important. And then, like I said, that global recognition. So the World Health Organization, or the WHO, added the PMDD in 2019 to what was called the ICD Chapter 11, which was the International Classification of Diseases. It was, again, kind of just placed in there. We need more data. We don't know what this is. And it really didn't fully get implemented until 2022. How many years ago was that? Okay. Globally implemented in 2022. So yes, that's great. We have recognition beyond the US and beyond US psychiatry. And that will add now to the ability to have more culturally congruent care. And so now we can look at how other countries are handling PMDD and utilize some of that information and build that into the US. We can also look at how women are treated in other countries compared to the US, how they're valued, how medicine is seen for women versus the US. A lot of that is important in terms of impact later on. Why the delay? Why did we wait so long from the mid 1900s to have some information until 2022, 2013? I mean, the fact that any of this is happening with a year starting with a 2 is insane. It was misunderstood biology, right? That whole imbalance of hormones. Yeah, you just got a hormone imbalance. Let's put you on some, what is putting little children on Ritalin or what about estrogen? Estrogen, right? Putting little girls on preconception. There we go. Birth control. Birth control. What is the great part? But doing that, right? And then moving on to overlapping and misunderstanding the differences between other mood disorders. Claiming this, that, and the other, like we said, bipolarism, anxiety, another, you're just depressed. You're just depressed 24/7. Limiting research in menstrual health. Okay, let's face it, if there's not a man attached to it, we're not going to research. We're going to spend all the money in the world for erectile dysfunction. But when it comes to somebody living with PMDD, you'll be okay. Gender bias in medicine is real. Absolutely real. And this is one of the major reasons for that delay in diagnosis. What do we know? We know now that science shows that this is not just a hormone imbalance. And I'm going to say that multiple times. It is not just a hormone imbalance. it is an increased sensitivity to hormonal fluctuations, to normal hormonal fluctuations. Nothing is off kilter here. It is in that we know that our hormones use these pathways and sends messages to our brain. And so all of those serotonin pathways are connected in different ways that highlights an issue, that let us know that there's a problem. And this is what we need to really start to deal with now, is not just to look at, okay, yeah, we know PMDD exists, but now how are we going to treat it? How are we going to help people living with this? In closing, because I know I took a time. In closing, right? The question is no longer whether PMDD. The real question is how early will we recognize it, and how effectively will we respond? And as a person who deals with and supports many BIPOC women, being heard and seen is not an easy thing. It is something that we're often, usually, kind of left in the dust. So not just not being a man, but not being a white woman is also some things that prevent us from having real and tangible diagnoses. Again, go back and have those conversations with your daughters about their menstrual phase. Is right follicular, ovulation, luteal, let them know all of those things exist, and talk to them about highlighting when things are off. Because when you follow those patterns, you know exactly what it's related to. Okay? Yeah, I know we're gonna have some great speakers after me. We're gonna go into details, but like I said, my discussion was not from a clinical lens. It was for historical lens, okay? And I want to thank you all for your time, your attention, and let's have a good time. Thank you, Dr. Michelle. Thank you, Dr. Michelle, for giving us this thorough overview and the evolution of PMTT. That was so good. Everybody, let's give her another round of applause. So good. And now I want to introduce Laura Fanulo. She's actually our only student presenting today. So I'm going to tell them how. And after coming up, again, I invite you to look at her bio and look at her work in our. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. So I am going to be going into a little bit more detail about the differences between EMS and PMDD, just to give you guys a little bit more information on it. Before we begin, I would just like to encourage you to pull out the figure that kind of looks like this. Just and there should be a pen in the back as well. So before we begin, just on the top row, write down one word that the first word that comes to mind when you hear PMS, and the first word that you think of when you hear PMDD. Now I'm going to let them do that.
And then just give a thumbs up and down. So, just a little quick overview. I am going to be going into detail, just defining a little bit more on what PMS looks like, what PMDD looks like, um, the differences between the symptoms, specific symptoms diagnosed from a clinical perspective, some causes and risk factors, and then treatment options and seeking help. So PMS, as we heard, is a combination of symptoms. Most common ones are listed here, that occur between 1 to 2 weeks before the menstrual cycle, and then it usually subsides once the menstrual cycle begins. It affects about 90% of women with varying severity. So for some, it would be very mild symptoms, and for other women, it's more moderate. Um, PMS is so because it affects 90% of women, it is more common. Um, and typically does not impair overall functioning. So if you would like to, I would encourage you to think about it as uh, a rainstorm, or maybe it's a light drizzle for someone. So what PMS could look like in daily life, it could look like Sarah's routine where she wakes up, maybe she's a little bloated, she has a mild headache, but she still has enough energy to get up and make herself some breakfast, maybe get her kids ready for school. And then throughout the day, maybe she becomes a little bit irritable, maybe she has a little bit of, she gets annoyed with a coworker here and there, but she's still able to maintain her professionalism and get through those meetings without any issues. And then by the time she comes home, maybe she's tired, she's craving some chocolate. She just wants to, relax, wind down from the day, but she's still able to prepare herself for the next day. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Um, as we heard, is a recognized mental health diagnosis in the DSM-5. Um, when people think of PMDD, they usually think of it as a severe form of PMS, but as we are learning today, it's more than that. So, the most important thing to remember about PMDD is that it causes that significant distress and daily functioning. And it's not as common as PMS. It only affects about 3 to 8% of women who have their menstrual state. So what that could look like in uh, daily routine would be Maya's, where She wakes up and she has a profound sense of hopelessness. She has so much anxiety that she can barely get herself out of bed. Um, at, if, at work, if she's able to go to work, maybe she calls out of work that day, but if she doesn't, she goes to work. Maybe she has to excuse herself from a meeting or take a 15-minute break because she's so overwhelmed. Maybe she becomes tearful and she feels out of control of her emotions. And then by the evening time, she's very fatigued, very tired, no energy. Maybe she doesn't have enough energy to deal with her kids. Maybe she asks her partner to cook dinner that night because she just wants to go to bed and she uh, is unable to prepare for the next upcoming days. So as we can see in these differences here, as we've mentioned, PMS is mild to moderate symptoms. The impact is manageable. So it's something that we can still get through our day. Um, and then there are some symptoms present, but they're not as severe. And for PMS, there's no formal diagnosis. On the other hand, PMDD is more severe. The impact is destructive, so it impacts how we're able to function in our daily lives. And the symptoms, the mood symptoms, like I said, is dominant, it's intense, it's inhibiting. And as we know, there is a formal diagnosis. So, with the two scenarios that I gave you there, you can really see the difference there where Sarah, she has these symptoms, but like I said, she's able to function, she's able to get through her day without too much disruption. And maybe Sarah, she's experiencing a little rain, maybe a light rainstorm, maybe there's some thunder. However, for Maya, she's experiencing a hurt. Maybe the porch furniture gets knocked over and maybe the mailbox gets torn off and uh, there's a lot more damage and severity there. So for symptoms to diagnosis for PMDD, um, in the DSM, there according to the DSM, there has to be at least 5 symptoms present. So it could be a combination of physical symptoms or psychological symptoms. However, one of them must be a core mood symptom, such as the mood swings, the irritability, depressed mood, and anxiety. The symptoms must the symptoms interfere with daily life, and they occur during the luteal phase, and then they improve after the onset of the period starts. So for to kind of figure this out, symptom tracking is very important. And so there, in order to receive a diagnosis, there has to be at least 2 to 3 cycles, consecutive cycles where you see symptoms, right before through, and then maybe uh, clearing off once period starts. Um, so there's that repetition there, there's that pattern there. And then it's very important as well to rule out any other medical issues that may be causing symptoms of PMDD, which I will talk about a little bit further in a minute. Um, and again, there's that disruptive nature of the symptoms on their home life and relationships. So, as I said, PMDD is highly misdiagnosed, highly underdiagnosed. Some common medical issues that may kind of interfere with that could be fibromyalgia, could be chronic migraines, IBS, anemia. Some of these medical issues have symptoms that are similar to PMDD that may make us look away from a proper diagnosis. Symptoms that overlap could include the fatigue, the mood shifts, anxiety, brain fog, some depressive symptoms, especially with thyroid issues that can present as depressive symptoms. And then for mental health diagnoses, as we've heard, it's commonly misdiagnosed. The two most common mood disorders that it's misdiagnosed for is major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. Major depressive disorder because a lot of the mood symptoms present as depressive symptoms, and then bipolar disorder because of the mood swings that are very severe and rapid. Some possible risk factors include a history of mood disorders, of anxiety disorders. Maybe there's family history, someone in your family that you someone in your family may have it. Maybe you know or you don't know, but that's a good conversation to have with your family, just so you have that awareness. And then demographics and environment. So, like I mentioned earlier, typically the symptoms start to really show or become more prominent in between your 20s and 30s. And then they progress even more once you start getting closer to the, oh my gosh. Yeah. And then the other major risk factor is stress. The more stressed you are, the more likely you are to have these symptoms. Um, so biological causes, there's still a lot of research that needs to be done. Right now, from our understanding, um, as we mentioned earlier, it's the sensitivity to the performance, right? The changes, the fluctuations, um, the estrogen, progesterone, even our brain chemicals, there's sensitivity to that there whenever we're going through those changes. So some treatment options. First things first, the most important thing is to track your symptoms. So at the end of this presentation, there is a QR code in which you will have access to these slides. And there is also a mood chart available for your use so that you can track your symptoms, keep an eye on them. It'll ask you questions about what symptoms you may experience, how severe they are for you, and how they affect your daily functioning. Some things that you can do on your own, lifestyle modification. So, developing some healthy habits that can help alleviate some of those symptoms. It could look like 30 minutes a day of exercise, specifically cardio, um, increasing your sleep or developing good sleeping habits, decreasing nicotine and alcohol use, reducing sugar, caffeine, and sodium, staying hydrated, drinking lots of water, that can help with PMDD and PMS as well. Having a nutrient dense diet, stress management is another big one because as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the major risk factors. So that could look like yoga, doing meditation, partaking in self care, doing things that you enjoy, developing coping skills for you to be able to handle the stress when you are confronted with it. Um, and then some supplements, taking supplements as well, which I'll go into a little bit of detail. So the most uh, common or evidence-based supplements that have been found to be helpful with treating symptoms of PMDD or even PMS are calcium, vitamin B6, vitamin E, and magnesium. These supplements typically um, helping with the hormone production, um, decreasing psychological symptoms as well as physical symptoms such as bloating, the mood swings, the irritability, and things of that nature. There are also herbal remedies that you can use. The ones that are featured here, they're all available on Amazon. Um, Before you experiment with these, however, I would encourage you guys to consult a uh, healthcare provider before you, get into using them, just to make sure that, your body will agree with them. But shasta berry, for example, is helps to balance hormones, reduce mood swings and bloating. Um, St. John wort is another one that helps regulate mood symptoms. So these are all available on Amazon, but you can also get them at local pharmacies, um, such as with CVS or this GNC is another good one. Clinical treatment could look different. It will look different for everyone because there is everyone experiences it differently. And so it would look like light therapy, which helps to improve sleeping patterns, reduce symptoms of depression, boost serotonin in the brain. It could look like psychotherapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, which are both helpful in developing coping skills to help with emotion regulation, reducing stress, improving quality of life, and really targeting any negative thoughts, any ruminating thoughts that you may experience while you're going through these cycles. It could go to the extent of getting surgery to get everything taken out, your fallopian tubes, your all things. And that would typically be accompanied by hormone replacement therapy um, to help with that sensitivity to those hormone fluctuations. And then there are, I can't say this word, chemical approach, as we mentioned earlier, birth control, hormone therapy, antidepressants, things of that. So for seeking out help, I think the first step is tracking your symptoms, self-advocacy, making sure that you um, keep track of what you're experiencing because you are your first advocate. Um, as even Danielle mentioned, you're going to have to speak up for yourself and really fight for yourself, especially as a woman and seeking out treatment, as a BIPOC woman as well. Um, Keeping in mind while you're tracking those symptoms, when do they start to come up for you? When how severe or how intense do you feel those symptoms? And then once you have a good amount of tracking, like I said, it 2 to 3 cycles um, for an official diagnosis. Bring that to your healthcare provider. Seek out professional consultation, professional evaluation. Get whatever medical diagnoses that may be presenting as one or the other, just ruling out anything to make sure, be certain of whatever you have going, whether it's PMDD or fibromyalgia or recurrent migraines or any of those others. So to receive a formal diagnosis, start with your healthcare provider. Like I said, seek out that consultation, those evaluations. You can even reach out to your OBGYN, rule out any other medical conditions, and then talking about just exploring daily symptom tracking. And that's something you can even do on your own, starting today if you really wanted to. And then getting a specialized evaluation from either a psychiatrist or a counselor, which you can get. You can find one on your own, or you can ask your primary care physician for a referral. And here are some resources. And like I said, you guys will have access to this in just a moment. But these are some websites where you can find a counselor if you feel like if this is something that speaks to you, so if this is something that you'd like to explore, or if you just need someone to talk to in general. Maybe you don't have PMDD, but you're going through something else. So just to reach out, get that support that you need. Some source where you can get those, look for those supplements, and then there are some websites here. If you are curious and would like to read more about PMDD. And here are some emergency resources just in case. And here is that QR code at the top. And so, as you guys are saying this, I would just like to encourage you to go back to that paper that you guys started out with and write one word that you think about, that the first thing that comes to mind when you hear PMS versus PMDD now. And just take a moment to reflect and see, maybe, you know, it's the same, that's okay. Or maybe you think a little bit differently about it.
Hey, Lauren, the phone is like truncated or something. Yeah.
Well, while we wait for that, would anyone like to share maybe their differences? I will. Do you want before and after? Okay, so PMS for before, I said cramp and attitude. And then PMDD before, I said annoyed, tired, despair, mad, irritated, mean, depressed, no energy. And then I realized it said the first word that comes to mind, but I was like, whatever. And then after I put PMS stress and then PMDD struggle. Another question, will anyone else? What is that GABA? The back, yes, so GABA is a brain chemical that we all have, which is one of those chemicals that relate to, can be related to the.
Stay tuned for that code. I'm waiting for the cord back on. No, I'm. Okay. Maybe like that. That works.
It works.
Oh, sorry, Becky. Is everybody go to the code? Perfect. And give the student a round of
Yeah.
applause.
And to be more specific, she's my intern at Lifeguard Countdown. And so the grant thing is next.
Just to help everyone, I had trouble opening up the link in my QR code reader, but when I copied the link to a browser, I was able to open it up. So if you guys are having trouble, that might help you too.
Thank you for that. So if you copy the link and paste it in your browser, it will open. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it out. Thank you. Thank you all. All right, everyone. So this next segment is going to require a little bit of audience participation. So we're going to have Christine L.I.M.E, the owner of Sanford Pelvic Therapy, to come up. And as she's coming up, once again, you guys can view her bio and the work that she does in the program. Thank you.
I'll just be using my viewpoint. If anybody's back cannot hear me, you just let me know. I used to teach martial arts, so I can talk really loud if I need to. So I'm Christine L.I.M.E. I'm the owner and primary clinician at Center Pelvic Therapy. We have a heard of the land, and we do not specifically treat PMDD, but we see a lot of clients with different kinds of reasons why they might have pelvic pain or issues in their abdomen and their pelvic area. And so we help people manage some of their symptoms and pains, and that can decrease a lot of anxiety and worry about their body. And so I'm here today to talk about nervous system regulation. And that is a big part of managing any type of mood disorder or anxiety, depression, is using your central nervous system to help manage that. So it's not going to be like, oh, I do these things and I don't have a problem anymore. Right? It's gonna be things that you can add to your life to complement other types of treatment. Right? Sometimes it can make a really big difference, and maybe that is enough for you. But it's not a way to just not get the other medical treatment that you deserve this condition, right? So one of the first things, I'm going to be talking about things that are either free or very inexpensive and very low energy cost, right? Because when we're dealing with worry and anxiety and depression and mood disorders, we don't need something that's going to take a lot of energy, time, and money to help us, okay? And so we need things that we can do that are small, but very impactful. All of these things are evidence-based. There's lots of research around these things, but they're also very impactful. So the first one is moving and just walking. So we're not talking, I know it said 30 minutes of cardio. That is excellent and healthy for you. But just walking, even research shows that walking 5 to 12 minutes in a day can make a difference right away. We're changing your brain chemicals, serotonin for like leveling out your mood, endorphins for pain relief, dopamine for giving your brain motivation, that motivation feeling, right? And so just walking for like 5 to 12 minutes can change that immediately. And the best case scenario would be in a daily habit of walking. I have a German Shepherd and she gets mad at me if I don't walk her. She needs her exercise. So sometimes pets or even a child that you can push in a stroller or walk with, being out in nature would be the most beneficial to you. But you're going to take what you can get, even if it's walking around your house in a loop or walking on a treadmill or something like that. Okay. So the evidence shows 20 minutes a day would be even better. And it's more about consistency than high volume and a walk or walking really fast. That's not the most important part. It's just about moving your body. So not only we're going to change our brain chemicals, but we're also going to be moving, and that takes us out of the freeze. Right? We have fight, flight, freeze, fawn, but we're taking our body out of the freeze mode of depression. So simply moving and walking can help that stop that little feeling. And also it's been shown to help with reducing ruminating thoughts. Moving your body helps you move off of a certain thing with your brain so you're not focused on that one thing, you're not frozen in that happen, right? So super easy. Most of the times, we can find a way to walk 5 minutes, even if it's around your house, right? So some people cannot walk. Maybe sitting in a chair doing some marching or reciprocal motion. So that's like opposite body movements, right? Could be like a marching in your chair or moving your body and twisting your body. Okay, cross body movements, right? So don't let your injury or a disability keep you from moving in some way, right? So that's the first thing, right? The second thing is breathing. So using your diaphragm to do more of your breath work than your accessory upper neck breathing capacity, right? So our diaphragm, a lot of you are familiar with your diaphragm. It's a muscle that runs all the way across your body, inside you, a whole layer of muscle, and it's attached around your lower ribs area and into your spine. And so that's supposed to be our go-to most powerful breathing mechanism in our body. But oftentimes through just general life stress, the world around us, we start using our backup systems and not our diaphragm. So if you see, say, an animal sleeping or a relaxed baby, you'll see their bellies moving, they're breathing down here, right? Or if you see an animal under distress, and we are animals, we'll be breathing up here. Even just seeing my body breathe differently, right? If you see, it looks stressful, right? So that is something to notice about your body. Right? So you can just check in with your body throughout the day and notice, oh, am I doing this kind of breathing? Or am I letting myself expand around this part of you? So we're going to just practice breathing like that. Some of us will find it very easy, and some people actually find it quite challenging because the nervous system has been doing it differently. Right? So if you can either put your arms like this at your lower ribs, or if your shoulders don't like being in that position or you don't have space, you can also just hug yourself and put your hands on your lower ribs here. Okay? And what I want you to do is breathe slowly into the nose, and then even slower out through your mouth. Right? So we're breathing in, we're trying to move our hands away from each other. And then exhaling even slower than your inhale. And you might find, wow, that's really hard for me to take long, slow breaths. And that just means you need to practice something. All right. Our diaphragm is our conscious mind's connection to your central nervous system and your autonomic nervous system, right? So our diaphragm is running a lot of things, the way our heart rate is, our organ function, it's making a big difference in all those functions. Our vagus nerve function, and all day long it's just doing it without you thinking about it. But we can use our conscious mind and change how it's functioning. As we breathe slower, we're changing the chemicals in our body again. We're changing our body by breathing slow. And chemical change means central nervous system and brain change. Right? So as we breathe in, it's exciting to our nervous system a little bit. Our heart rate increases a little as we're inhaling. And then as we're exhaling, our central nervous system is dilated down, and our heart rate is decreased. And this ebb and flow of change of the up and the down is what's really, really healthy for our central nervous system regulation. So I don't know if anybody has heard of like heart rate variability. That's something that's like big thing right now. People are checking their heart rate variability with their smartwatches and different devices that are specific for that. And what that's measuring is how your heart rate is changing throughout the day. So if we're in a depressed state, we might be in this low state all day. Or if we're in this really anxiety state, we might be in this really high state all day. And either one of those is not healthy for our central nervous system. What we want is we want to move in and out of these different states of excitement and relaxation throughout the day, depending on what's happening in the moment. So by doing this breath work, we're helping that change. We're changing into the excitement and then into the relaxation. Now we're also going to use movement of our spine. And our spine goes all the way from our skull down to our tailbone. And you've probably seen like the cat and the cow movements. You can do that in sitting as well. Okay. So I'm going to kind of sit sideways so you can see my movement. All right. And this is something you can do just whenever you feel like it. First, the breathing. I love it because you can breathe that breath anytime. Nobody can take that from you. I mean, you know. Circumstance. Okay. But for the most part, that's something that we can control and we can own of ourselves. That, you know, without the end of life, nobody's taking it from you, right? And so we can take a little bit of control in our moment with our breath anytime that we want to. So that's a beautiful thing about breath. Okay. Now, what we want to do is as we're exhaling, we're crumpling and relaxing our body. And as we're inhaling, we're extending and opening our chest and using these muscles on the back. It's like the excitatory opening and relaxing. Like that. I like to do, you guys might not have space with the partner next to you at your table, but I use my hands and bring my shoulders down and get a stretch in my back. And then inhaling and opening. And you can go with your breath speed, or if that's difficult, you can just move your spine and breathe naturally as you're going out. And so that's a way to change your nervous system and help create this ebb and flow of how that is responding. So those are the first two things. All right. Number 3, so those were free. I recommend finding time to do these daily. that is what really helps a person's nervous system, is not just waiting until you're in this moment of distress to practice something, but have it as a daily habit. You can do it while you're driving, you can do breath work. I don't recommend this one. But that's a great time to breathe because it can be stressful, right? Okay, so you can just like make sure your arms are not like this on the steering wheel, right? Relax here and let your belly get soft and do some slow inhales and exhales. I do it when I the same when I walk my dog. That's like a great morning ritual for myself. I walk my dog, I move, I'm getting the morning light, letting go of the stress because even when I'm a pretty relaxed person, little hyper, but like not stressed feeling kind of person, but I don't know, I'm just holding tension. So just having time when you're intentionally being aware of that moving. The last one, or the third one here, is an easy one, and it's even more passive. Right? Sometimes we just can't do anything. Is aromatherapy, right? Using your senses. So that's what it is. We're delighting in our senses. I have some of these that I created for you guys as a gift. I have already run out. So you can choose any scent that you like. Right? Anything that gives you pleasure is great. Just put it in your diffuser and just turn it on, and that's it. Okay? That was my act of helping my nervous system regulate for the moment. Very passive, doesn't take a lot of time. This one is a blend of different scents, right? They're essential oils, and it has like some of the most researched ones for calm. So in here, it's lavender, bergamot, chamomile, and a couple of other ones. The ingredients, you look like you said, time glass to read it, but they're on there, so you make sure you in case for some reason you don't have sensitivity to something, you never. And so you can just have this in your pocket or your purse or wherever, right? In your car, and just smell it and enjoy the scent of it first, right? Like be there in the moment, enjoy that smell. But there is research showing that these different oils and scents are great for calming you. So this is the ones that shows that, right? So you're welcome to take one to the table. And like I said, passive, easy. And the last thing I want to leave you with is our student, she mentioned tracking your symptoms. And it can seem very tedious to do something like that. There's papers, and she had a great one to print. There's apps specifically for PMDD, free apps that you can track your symptoms on as well, right? If you prefer electronic, to carry your paper around with you and everything. But something with a medical provider, I encourage people to track their symptoms of whatever the thing is that's bothering them. Because as a medical provider, when you go to your medical provider, you're giving them information about yourself. And we sometimes tend to underreport our distress. We want to say, oh, I have this, but, I can make it through the day. And, I'm just doing this to cope and these kinds of things. And really having a good sense of what your actual symptoms are throughout time. Once your medical provider take your symptoms more seriously, it's objective data. Also, sometimes we might get overwhelmed in a doctor's office describing our symptoms and what our days would be like, and that allows you to give them this what it is here without me reliving all that like trauma and feelings while I'm there. It's like this is my objective data, but really providing your medical provider with that information and not underreporting how you're feeling. you know, we tend to like suck it up and be tough. My family's German, and a very unhealthy thing about old school German culture is if you are sick or depressed or injured, that is a character flaw. It's not healthy. It's, you know, it's like, oh, you know, we don't get, I haven't been sick in 2 years, you know, like it's very, you know, part of the pride of not being, you know, being the beat, right? But it's not a character flaw to be sick, to be injured, to have your body not responding the way we expect it to be responding. So sometimes we put that on ourselves as a character flaw because we can't handle it. Can't just suck it up and change ourselves just thinking about it. Right? So making sure that you have good data to show what is going on in your body. And those are my physical therapy tips. So physical therapy, of course, we don't prescribe anything. Everything we do is holistic and managing the nervous system, the muscular system, and help people with managing some organ systems too, like bladder, types of issues. Okay. So thank you so much for having me today. I really
Thank you, Christine. Let's give her another round of applause. Now, the next segment, we're gonna address barriers to care, and we're gonna have Dr. Tamara McRoy come up. And as she's coming up, once again, you guys can read her bio and take a look at some of her professional work in the program.
So I put me between lunch. I'm been spending too much time. I won't be before you long. And thank you guys so much. All right, so once more, my name is Dr. Tamara McRae. In corporate America, I'm all things compliance, management, I go into stigma, it's my jam, you know, internal audit. But as far as ministry, I'm maternal mental health, and so I am the owner of Maternal Marriage Savings, we are 501c3 by counseling and support services to those with perinatal postpartum. My doctor is actually in counseling psychology, and my specialty is addiction counseling. And so we work to make certain we're saving souls and so forth. And I'm here, so super stoked to be here to represent Postpartum Support International, the Florida chapter. I'm on the board, and I'm going to go ahead and get into it. So we're talking about barriers to care. And so the truth is, right, reproductive mental health conditions are not rare. What is rare, timely, accurate, and acceptable care. PMDD is not alone. The system surrounding it is. What are barriers to care? Well, barriers are not just about access. They are shaped by medical bias, healthcare system design, insurance structure, public policy, and education gaps, to say the least, but it's not an exhaustive list. And so when we think about different aspects of the bias in our medicine, historically, women's symptoms have been minimized and dismissed. What Dr. Michelle stated with regard to the historical context from which we've come to where we're at now, it just totally just sums it up, right? And so common experiences have been, right? It's just hormones, you're overreacting, you'll be fine. That part, right? And what does that impact look like? Delayed diagnosis, misdiagnosis, loss of trust in providers. Can anyone relate with that? Yeah. Clinical blind spot. So many providers are not trained in reproductive psychiatry. What gets missed? Cycle-based symptom tracking, which just talked about tracking, right? You'll see some trends here. Hormonal influence on mood, distinguishing PMDD from other disorders. And then what does that result look like? Women are treated for the wrong condition for years. Fragmented healthcare system. So mental health and reproductive health are treated separately. Your OBGYN is reproductive focus. Mental health is psychiatric focus, and few integrated care models do exist, but then women are left navigating both systems alone. And so we need more of that wraparound holistic approach to not just the mental health aspect, but also the healthcare aspect as well. Access to mental health services. Even when help is sought, limited trained providers, right? We talked about that. That exists still. There are long wait lists because when you have a good one, and sometimes there are far few in between, there's that limited accessibility in getting in. Short appointment windows, because they're packed, right? And we do know sometimes that some physicians don't have that bedside manner, right, to an extent. And then geographic limitations. And so I'll put a pin in it there. I live in Palm Coast, and I used to live in Winter Park. And coming from urban, moving out to suburban, and then we treat moms that are in rural areas. It's totally different. Night and day, the state of least is like being on Earth and being on the moon when we look at different disparities, right? And so that access does not equal availability. Insurance and financial barriers. Insurance often does not support specialized care, long-term therapy, or even integrated treatment models. Care becomes dependent on income. And we all sometimes have different socioeconomic levels, right? What's in someone's wallet is not maybe what's in someone else's wallet. And what we do see historically, what happens is that depending on where you're at on the total pole, it also depends on your quality of life. Once more, going back to rural and underserved communities, in many communities, limited behavioral health infrastructure it's really disheartening. There are few specialists, transportation challenges, that's something major. We were servicing a mom out there in the boonies of Burnell. Have anyone ever been to Burnell? Looking here, the part where you pray your tires don't get stuck in the mud or you want to answer. You gotta live for some of them. Right. But she was out there and she was pregnant and she didn't have her own transportation. And so but her doctor's appointment because Blackman County is a maternal desert. So we had to either go to Halifax or go up to St. John's. So her doctor's appointments were in St. John's. And it was a hit or miss in her getting there. So when we look at transportation challenges and that extent, where we talk about wraparound services, it's very important that you have that resource lifeline from others who were able to connect her with a provider in Daytona who actually made it her business to have her team go out there, pick her up, bring her to the appointment, and bring her back. And these are just here in the maternal mental health space. Just think about so many other different pieces, right? When we're talking about PMDD. And so what happens with those results? Once more, we're talking about delayed care, misdiagnosis, and no continuity of support. And additionally, once more, we're still talking about barriers. There is that education gap. And so barriers exist at multiple levels. Patients may not recognize symptoms. Providers may not assess correctly. Communities lack awareness. So PMDD is often normalized instead of treated. Let's begin. Policy gaps. And this, I'm a big advocate. I'm like, don't take it to the hill. We're gonna get it go, right? So policy has not kept pace with need. Gaps include limited funding for women's mental health, no standardized screening requirements, lack of integrated care mandates. Without policy, systems do not change. And what happens when systems fail? Barriers stack So women suffer in silence, conditions worsen over time, risk of crisis increases. And so it could just be one um, abnormality, and then it grows into something else, and then next thing you know, you have compounded issues that are stacking, right? And this is it's not the individual's failure, it's the system's failure. Look how long it took for PMDD to get into the DSM, just so it can start to get some recognized, right? So when we talk about reproductive mental health, the continuum, PMDD is not isolated. It connects to what the consumption, mental health, pregnancy and postpartum conditions, long-term emotional health. And what we do know is that without intervention, challenges compound. What needs to change? We need structural shifts, improved clinician training, integrated care models, expanded access to service, and policy reform. So the role of community-based support, it looks like community models help bridge gaps by reducing stigma. We have to talk about these things, right? Let folks know that they're not suffering in silence alone. Providing early support, connecting individuals to care, that's part of that wraparound, that continuum of care, that holistic approach, and offering culturally responsive services. You know, when we think about it, you know, a veteran wants to go and have a counseling session with another veteran. They get it, right? You know where I'm coming from with some of these different things. And so that's the same type of lens we should be looking at when we're talking about helping individuals thrive, not just survive. Why? Because access begins outside of traditional systems. Um, we need to do a better job at moving away from the usual regular regular norms and being more open to the new ways in which we should be doing things to help establish and enhance the well-being of lives, right? So, better path forward. What does that look like? Women and assigned females at birth, right? We're going to make sure we get the circumference. Individuals deserve systems that listen, recognize, diagnose accurately, please, right? Please, and provide acceptable care. PMDD is treatable. The barriers are preventable, and the system must evolve. Thank you, everyone.
All right, everyone, let's give Dr. Samara another round of applause. Okay, so at this time, we're gonna have our networking lunch. It'll be about 45 minutes. We'll be back at 1. And during the lunch, I invite you guys to visit our tables, definitely network and ask the questions that you have, and then we'll be back at 1. And you can help yourself. That does it.
let you know when we.
Oh, God, don't bring them up. We were just talking about how, I've been on like, I support a lot of like, policies, and stuff, but they'll have like these calls, like webinars, they use their Q&A. I don't like, hang out with women like that when I talk to them. But like, that's where I end up like stumbling like, I watch it, there's some. Also, put my. But yeah, I'm gonna grab what you get. Together, the water debate. I'm a little different. I kind of like serious with that. Right, and that is so.
Oh, sir, hold on. Oh, here we go.
Yes. I don't know if y'all do, but. Stuff that nobody knows. Still got stuff that.
Let's go. No, it was like a black bin. I work my butt. One year that I like. Oh, thank you. We can make the same. They can be on top. Oh, they can be on top.
Yeah, I was buying everything, but. That way. No.
Yeah. I was around the same time you paid.
We've been going to church over, it's kind of down for, yeah.
He was, the pastor, he is still not.
All right. Welcome back.
So, I know that no one really properly introduced themselves, but I want you guys to know you're in a room with some pretty phenomenal people. Yeah, they're very well educated, skilled, and passionate about the work they do. So I hope that you got business cards and you made some connections that you can keep in your back pocket when you're going through things. I want to introduce myself. I will be the MC for the second half. My name is Janae Ponder. I'm a mental health advocate and educator here on the west side of Volusia. My office is right in Deltona on Deltona Boulevard. And I just want to drop this last nugget before we get right back in. It's really important that if you have an idea that's going to edify and uplift the community, that you don't sit on it. This event is a result of someone having an idea and following that idea wherever it may lead. And I can't imagine how many more ideas are out there stuck in people's heads. There are people that want to help you. There are people that invest in these types of things. So just ask the right people the right question. You too can have a symposium. Yes. All right, so we're getting into the second half, and we have Shakira Champion coming up. She's going to be talking about women and AFAB individuals shared experience. And AFAB stands for assigned female at birth. If you were wondering, please honor Shakira by reading her bio. And we're going to honor your time by not reading it out loud, but still read her story so you know all about her background and what she's accomplished. All right, good afternoon. It is such a pleasure to be here with you all today. This is such an important topic that it takes so many women to make that individual. I am really short, so hopefully you can see me. I'm 4'11" and I have on heels. Standing behind this podium and makes me look even shorter. But what I can say is that as I was sitting back listening to some of these other presentations, what I found is that it is so amazing that a lot of our information kind of is interconnected and intertwined. So a lot of the stuff that you were going to talk about this afternoon isn't new information. And so I guess it makes my job a little easier because I'll just drive it home, right? And kind of talking to you about holistic coping tools and tips that kind of help people with PMDD experience. Okay. So we will jump right into the presentations and make them quick then. Yeah. All right. So some common lived experiences of women and AFAB individuals with PMDD include recurrent emotional and psychological distress, severe mood changes, specifically during that luteal phase, which, as we have all learned today, is that week or two prior to menstruation. Some of those symptoms tend to include things like feelings of anxiety, feelings of depression, hopelessness, irritability, and frustration, right? There's also some physical symptoms, things like fatigue, headache, nausea, changes in your eating and your sleeping patterns. Many patients oftentimes will talk about a feeling of two selves, where they feel totally disconnected or detached from their typical day-to-day personalities and even their physical body because of those experiences. And some additional lived experiences include things like feeling misunderstood or invalidated. Patients oftentimes will report a lack of awareness or knowledge from their healthcare providers about their PMDD symptoms, which oftentimes will have clients having to self-advocate. While self-advocacy can be a empowering thing, it can also be incredibly emotionally taxing, having to constantly explain how this affects and impacts your life on a day-to-day basis. So self-advocacy is beautiful, but it's also challenging for patients to have to relive those stories and constantly educate their healthcare providers about what's going on. PMDD can also affect romantic partnerships, workplace performance, education and social life, also self-esteem and identity. And so when thinking about that identity and self-perception component, many patients report feeling disconnected again and detached from their body. So someone that's typically outgoing, typically the life of the party, or always happy and jovial, or very easily connected to the community. Sometimes they find themselves staying in bed more often, feeling depressed, having difficulty just engaging in day-to-day life tasks. People report feeling broken or ashamed during these episodes, feeling like in some way their body has betrayed them. There's also some feelings of fearfulness and anxiety because although patients with PMDD recognize that PMDD is a part of their lived experiences, they also have anxiety when it comes to thinking about how will it show up for me this month. What will I need to do to kind of mitigate symptoms? Will it look the same this time as it did the last time? So anytime there is any question or uncertainty, that leaves us pause for some anxiety to show up. So what can we do? And again, Ms. Lauren did a phenomenal job with this whole slide. She already talked about what was on my presentation. So tracking and journaling cycles can be incredibly helpful because it helps us to identify trends. And whether those trends teach us what helps mitigate some of our symptoms or the things that tend to exacerbate those symptoms, this tracking can help us influence our lifestyle changes. And some of those more positive lifestyle changes can look like routine exercise, whether that is walking 5 to 10 minutes a day, whether that's stress reduction, which I understand is easier said than done, but also minimizing our salt intake, minimizing our caffeine and our alcohol consumption is also incredibly helpful. So therapy, things like cognitive behavioral therapy and DBT has been proven to be effective because therapy is a space where clients can learn about their symptomology, learn how it impacts them day to day. They can also learn coping skills and coping strategies to help navigate some of those things. But also therapists are a really, really good resource, helping patients be connected to other community providers, whether that's online forums or other systems of support. So one of the things I like to tell my clients all the time is lean in with curiosity versus criticism when thinking and talking about yourself. I have never heard anyone say talking poorly about themselves has helped fix anything. It oftentimes leaves you feeling worse. So what we say about ourselves absolutely matters. Also, deep breathing. And our other provider that I can't remember her name, she did such a phenomenal job in talking about
the importance of breath work that helps us regulate our nervous system. So many times we walk around holding our breath or taking these short, shallow breaths just because we're in survival mode all the time. But it is such a healing and cathartic experience when we learn how to breathe and breathe deeply, when we fill our lungs and allow our lungs to expand and decrease. Also, other things like time management and structured routine. Some of this is about controlling the things that we cannot control. So structure and routine helps us stay on task, but everything else in the world around us is going haywire. So again, it's about controlling the things we can control. Also, taking breaks and practicing self-care. I think a lot of us think we know what self-care means, or at least we know the social media version of self-care that looks like lavish vacations, that looks like us going to get our hair and our nails and our hair done. But when I think about self-care and I practice and teach self-care to my clients, I think about small intentional moments that we can incorporate in our day-to-day activities. I oftentimes think about something that I do every morning is I sit down with my 1 cup of coffee. Either I sit on the patio, I sit in front of in my living room. It's uninterrupted time. I'm not scrolling on social media. I'm not checking emails. I am being intentional with starting my morning off in a very soft girl kind of way, right? And so also I think other areas of self-care can look like taking a walk, whether that's to walk your dog or just to get out in the morning and let that vitamin D hit you in the face, right? But also some other things can look like dancing to your favorite song in the middle of the day. Also, how many times have we been thirsty and we ignore that thirst trigger? We will say, I'm gonna send an email first. I'm gonna call this person back first. So on and so forth. There have been times where I know I have filled my glass because I think something else is more important. Self-care is taking care of yourself and all. So we need to be intentional about it. When I think about patients with PMDD, a teacup for some reason comes to my mind because I think we all know the purpose of a tea kettle, right? It's to warm that water up so that it can get hot enough that we can make us a hot cup of coffee or a hot cup of tea. But so often, what happens when we put that tea kettle on the stove? Anybody? We forget about it because we're distracted. We'll mop the floor, we'll fold the laundry, we'll do bathroom, we will wash dishes. And what happens when you leave that tea kettle on the stove too long? It starts to scream at you. Right? It literally starts to scream at you. And the same thing happens with your body when you're not intentional and in tune with yourself. When you get distracted and start doing so many things for other people and other circumstances that we distract our attention and don't focus on ourselves. Again, if you recognize that PMDD is a part of your experience, then let's tune into that. Let's not ignore that and wait for your body to start screaming at you. And obviously, there are other things like medication and hormonal support. I'll just talk a little bit about that. So medications like SSRIs and other antidepressants are sort of like a first line of treatment because they help you stabilize mood, but also hormonal support such as birth control pills because they can help stabilize fluctuating levels of estrogen and progesterone. So in looking at the whole person, mental health, physical health, and social supports are so incredibly interconnected. Things like nutrition, sleep, stress management, and movement absolutely matter, and it's important that we attend to those things. Conversations like this absolutely matter because it gives us space for awareness. It also gives us the language that we need to effectively communicate our feelings, thoughts, wants, and needs to our care team and our providers, which then builds efficacy and self-esteem. These conversations also remind us that we are the experts in our own body. So two individuals can be experiencing PMDD, but their symptoms and its impact can affect you totally different. Care works best when it's collaborative. So the partnership between medical providers and mental health professionals is essential. Patients or clients need to absolutely understand that they are essential in decision making and creating their individual care plans and treatment plans. And within those treatment plans and care plans, there certainly needs to be some room for flexibility as symptoms and needs change. So what we want to remember, PMDD is real, it's serious, but it's also treatable. Women and ACAF individuals deserve inclusive, respectful care that includes empathy and collaboration. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to treatment. And my favorite one that I am learning more myself is that rest is not laziness. It's absolutely resistance. And it can be resistance to the expectations we put on ourselves, the expectations that other people put on us. This is an opportunity for us to take off our superwoman cape and just be human. We are just as important as the things we do each day and as the people that we serve. And so removing that cape and allowing yourself to be human is one of the best things you can do for yourself when it comes to coping and healing. That's our presentation, y'all.
Beautiful, straight to the point. We are just as important as the things we do every day. I hope somebody caught that nugget because I did. Put you on your to-do list. Put you on your list of things to invest. So next up, we have a very special guest. And I'm gonna ask you guys to really lean in and honor. It's not easy getting up talking about your own personal experiences, especially a topic that's taboo and no one's talking about. So I want you guys to give our special guest, Suzanne Hickley Long, a big round of applause.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. Thank you to my friend Danielle and all the wonderful people I've met already. I am here to just talk about my personal experience. I was diagnosed in 2018, 19, and lived primarily most of my life not knowing what was going on. I was an educator for 15 years and now I'm a mental health therapist. And I often identify this diagnosis within my clients. And we hit a lot of walls when it comes to working with psychiatrists and PCPs. And so just being a part of this and getting awareness out is, I'm just blessed to be here and I'm thankful to have this time. I am going to read what I wrote just to make sure I get it all the way I want it to be spoken. So it has been, it comes, being here comes at a really good time. I just had a recent flare up with, I have a 20-year-old who lives with me still and goes to college at UCF. And I lost my temper and didn't realize what was going on. And then as I was preparing to be here to talk to you, it all just kind of clicked. And then listening to all of the information today really just puts it into perspective. And it's very validating. And I think people with PMDD don't get validated often. And that can really wreak havoc on somebody's self-esteem, their confidence, and just their overall perspective of am I a good person, am I a bad person, you know, and just how it takes place in your life. My history with PMDD has been long and arduous. I say long because I started my period at 9 in 4th grade. Yeah. And so I didn't even think my mom had talked with me yet at that point. So I really, really didn't know what was going on. And I say arduous because I was not diagnosed until I was 39 years old. So I've had nicknames like the Grouch. Anyone remember Sesame Street? Yeah, Grouch or Miss Moody. And it just kind of turned into kind of a personality. I am very jovial and I am very happy and I'm pretty positive, but on some of the harder days, I am the Grouch. And for a very long time, I couldn't figure out what was the disconnect there. So this was pretty much 3 years of debilitating, I'm sorry, not 3 years, 3 decades of debilitating migraines, mood swings. I had endometriosis. With the birth of my first daughter in 2004, things changed. they miraculously changed. My pregnancy was a breeze. I did not, experience the mood fluctuations. Things leveled out and evened out. And it's been that way with all three of my pregnancies, which is interesting because it's kind of cool to have a really good pregnancy, but it also is, there's a grief process when you have to go back to not being, in a space where things are leveled out. I had very little to no emotional rage incidents, no crippling physical symptoms or mood swings. And I also need to add that during this time, my life took a tragic and traumatic turn with my first pregnancy, again in my second pregnancy 2 years later. And then I had probably seen her, my babysitter was sick today, so I apologize, but Mila, she came, she just turned 6 on Tuesday. So every single pregnancy has been very dramatic, traumatic, and lots of things going on. This ushered in external and internal stress with the pregnancy, with the external things going on. If I had not had such a great pregnancy, things would have been very drastic and would have had lasting negative effects, I believe. My second pregnancy 2 years ago proved to be the same experience. And again, this last time, and again, that pregnancy was not during the best of times either. After my first 2 daughters were born, my endometriosis improved. And the doctors say that's common. Well, my doctor said that's common, and I don't really know why, but I guess it just kind of reduces a lot of the things that are happening in the body. Additionally, my migraines decreased for the most part. What did not decrease was my rage and irritability, my joint pain, I get upper chest and shoulder pain, so I really appreciate Christine's deep breathing because it does tend to loosen up a lot of those areas. Fatigue, and then I wouldn't say I read that you can become suicidal during these times. I've never had that. Mine's more mild to moderate, depressive and anxious symptoms, thank goodness. On average, I would miss 1 to 2 days of work. And I was a teacher, and if anyone knows about being a teacher, if you miss a day, it's like missing a week because you have to prepare, and I won't go into all of that, but it's a lot. Plus, your boss doesn't look at you wrong. And again, I was told, like Dr. Tamara was talking about, I was told by doctors and professionals that this is normal and it's common, and just to kind of suck it up, buttercup. And so I never really understood what was going on for a very long time. What I did get, though, was a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And that was incredibly off the path because the symptoms weren't the same. Timelines with the mood episodes, episodic moods and the fluctuations, they weren't the same. The criteria did not match up. But it was as if my doctor and my OBGYN of 20 years, that was the only thing he had to go in his toolbox to kind of say what thought I had. So knowing that it didn't match, I didn't really take on the bipolar disorder diagnosis. I just kind of like, oh, that's lovely. But it always was in the back of my mind, well, if it's not that, then what is it? Or what's going on? At this point in my life, I'm an English teacher. I'm an athletic coach of 2 varsity sports. I'm a single mother. I was a single mom the entire time of my children, the pregnancies and their lives, and a daughter who was trying to distance myself from generational cycles of a dysfunctional family system. So I say all that because my support system was highly reduced. And, someone with PMDD needs a support system that gets it. So even if you don't have this diagnosis, but you may know one out of 20 women have this. They may not know it, but that statistic keeps popping up over and over. So if you could just be a support system to people who struggle with this, that would be so helpful. So in work, I was able to compartmentalize a lot of my irritability and rage. But when I got home, my daughters, I have a 21 and a 22 and a 20-year-old, they took the brunt of it. I never was abusive or physically abusive or emotionally abusive, but just isolating, distant, irritable, just snappy. And it's not the kind of mom that I've ever thought I would be. And then there would be weeks where I'd be rocking it. I was positive and we would do fun things and they got like more of a playful mom. And then, it's like a light switch just turns. And it's that, and then that routine fades where the switch just flips. And then you get a whole different mom. Additionally, I was also diagnosed with ADHD in college back in 1998. So that adds a whole nother spicy component, because you might, for example, when you start tracking symptoms, you, like the tea kettle example, you get empty, you start screaming, sometimes my tea kettle gets so empty, it like melts to the stove, if you will. And then I'm like, oh, light bulb, oh, something's going on. Let me check. Oh, yeah. And then everything tracks. With ADHD, when things are good, you forget to track a lot of times. And so it's not until my tea kettle is melted, all the water's gone and evaporated, that I'm like, oh, I need to pull it back. I need to rest. It's usually rest that I usually need to do. And disengage from any social events. You all caught me on a really good day. So lucky. Basically, this whole time I felt like the perfect storm of chaos that I learned to be normal in my childhood. And then I just kind of kept it going in my adulthood. And as a single mom and the stress that comes with it, I do a lot of apologizing, and I told my daughters I will pay for their therapy if they need it, because I have a lot of guilt and there's shame, obviously shame involved, because that's not where my heart is. My heart is to help people, to love people, to take care of people, especially my kids. Like my kids they're everything. I would love to say that my PMDD diagnosis was a breath of fresh air and a gift back to my sanity. However, it was not. I was diagnosed after changing from my previous OBGYN, the one that I had 15 to 20 years. And actually, I had 2 babies with him. My new OBGYN was just out of medical school. And so when it came out, the diagnosis came out, it was something in the matter of like an afterthought, like, I wonder if you have PMDD. And I had never heard of it. I didn't know what she was talking about. Additionally, there was no instruction, no treatment plan. So it was kind of this dangling thing out there, like, hey, this might be that, but we don't know. And it just kind of died there. So fast forward to 2017, I began my master's program in mental health counseling, get very acquainted with the DSM-5, which is a diagnostic tool for therapists, and it's in there. And I start studying it and researching it and thinking, wow, this is really something that could really be for me. Sadly, not a lot of my practitioners that I had at the time knew anything about it or didn't really, it just seemed like it's one of those things like, yeah, we'll get to it at some point, I think. But so there wasn't a whole lot of support or even information. Thank goodness for Instagram and TikTok, because now there's information and I double check with research, but there's a lot of good stuff out there that kind of just is validated. So it doesn't help that I come from a generation, kind of like Christine, who's German. I just come from a generation that has learned to ignore women's health and kind of push down symptoms and things and just like, I want to suck it up and pick up myself and just keep going. Nobody else is going to take care of it for me. So it just was a very long time for me to really start managing it. Diagnosis is one thing, but managing it is a completely different ballgame. It requires you to remain intentional every day with exercise and just tracking. But it is something that, you know, when with ADHD doesn't always stay consistent. If someone does not manage their BMDD, it can take a toll on your self-esteem, your relationships, and it masks your true loving self. It turns into character flaws and it really messes with your confidence. Am I a good person? Am I a bad person? What's wrong with me? And like Dr. Tamara said, there needs to be a systems change. And by being here and having this awareness in this symposium, this is the start of a very good thing. And with that, I am thankful to be here. You all have helped give me a toolbox of resources and coping skills. And I'm indebted to my friend Danielle for allowing me to be here. And it was an honor to be with you and letting you share or hear my story.
Thank you, Suzanne, for sharing. I guess, you know, in listening to Suzanne, which I knew already, but just to hear it from someone who actually walks the walk and not just talk the talk, PMDD really interrupts your sense of self. Like you question who you are, your identity. And that's definitely dysfunctional when you think about what we eat when we go to work or go to school or raise children. So this is actually my favorite part of today, the panel discussion. We get to hear from professionals, and we get to ask them questions. So bear with us. We're going to transition the room. We're going to move these 3 tables here in the front and put 5 chairs here and invite our panelists to sit in whatever chair looks the most comfortable. And I am going to turn over the mic to the moderator, Dr. Sylvie, who was up here earlier. And I am just going to melt in my chair. This is my favorite part. And I'm going to turn the lights on for us.
You got his elbow room. I put a chair on the end.
Okay. For our panelists, all I'm gonna ask is that you speak up, just because I can't bring the mic over. So, okay. Our first question is for Suzanne. You said that you got diagnosed, well, misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder, and then you got diagnosed with ADHD in college, and then you talked about the light switch and how like you're a bubbly person, but you're kind of labeled as a grouchy person. So my question for you is, how has PMDD personally affected your identity, your self-esteem, and your confidence?
It goes up and down. So 2 weeks out of the month, I'm rocking it. I'm awesome. I'm a woman. I've raising three strong-willed, go-getter girls. And then the other 2 weeks, it's fire dumpster fire. We're piecing the plane together as we fly it. And it does take a huge toll, because it's like, wow, I was so on top of my game literally yesterday, and then the light switch goes on or off, however you want to look at it. And it's just, the only word I can think of is debilitating, because it just it slams you. And then when I first came in today, people were talking about the difference between PMS and PMDD. I come from the time where we had mono music, and then we had stereo music with bass and so PMS to me is mono, and PMDD is stereo, and it gets loud. So I don't know if that helps, but
So question for you, Suzanne, and anyone else can answer. What are the challenges that arose during the diagnostic process?
awareness. We all understand just culturally how different diagnosis and things can happen. We understand how women's health is at a disadvantage when it comes to policy, when it comes to the social aspects, when it just comes to knowledge. And here's the thing, it's like another generation has been affected. My children have been affected. And if it had just been diagnosed at any point before my daughter was born in 2004, it would have just been a different story. So now we're trying to unravel a lot of the things that a diagnosis really could have helped in a lot of ways.
Dr. Samara, question for you in terms of barriers to care. You said that PMDD isn't the problem, the system is the problem. You addressed how women's symptoms have been dismissed. You addressed policy gaps and name a few of the many barriers and disparities, such as medical bias, healthcare system design, insurance, and financial barriers. So my question for you, Dr. Samara, is
if one change could be made within the system, what would it be?
I love this question, you guys.